Hi there. I wanted the opportunity to share with you the story of Bob. It was a year ago, and I was here at my home office and I was on a conference call. And I had been driving for a client of mine 1,500 miles a week. I mean, seriously, ask anybody, it was insane. And during the 5 years and 9 months or 6 years that I've worked for that company, I traveled 5 states. Illinois, Madison, Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Lexington, Kentucky. And during those travels, I had always seen panhandlers, and because I've been in the apartment industry for 40 years, I never really have understood homelessness. Years ago, I worked in Arizona before we had the recession, and at that time, affordable housing was really becoming top priority. Why are we having housing issues? Why don't we have any affordable housing? We have so many areas throughout the country that have vacant land or vacant homes or, foreclosed hotels. There's so many options that we have available. But needless to say, I'm in this conference call and all of a sudden I start writing down, a paper bag from a grocery store and then, water and toilet paper and granola bars and beef jerky. Like my mind just started racing. So I'm writing all this down, and I knew as soon as I was done with that conference call, I needed to prepare myself for another week on the road. So adding in this task of creating these bags, I just didn't have the time. I didn't want to make the time. So I got on the road, and of course, I was on my way to Indianapolis, and as I came off of the interstate ramp during January, snowy and cold, there was a homeless panhandler looking for money, something, anything. So of course I'm like, oh, okay, I get it, and I do believe that this was divinely inspired. I never really thought about getting into nonprofit business. I never really knew how to create a business plan with nonprofit management. So this was something I had no knowledge of at all. So I came back from that trip and put together, like grocery bags, like plastic grocery bags. And, I cleaned out my pantry and I cleaned out the medicine cabinets and I put 4 bags together and I put them in my car. Actually, I didn't put them in plastic bags, they were brown paper bags. So for weeks, I set off to find homeless or, somebody in need. And of course, I'm like, oh, I missed my opportunity. And I didn't. It was in February of last year, and I was on my way to Lexington, Kentucky for work. And I got in late. And as I got in late, I came off the interstate, and there in the center median was this gentleman. And it was cold, it was rainy, it was dark. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I found my homeless person. And I go into the 7-Eleven because now these paper bags have fallen apart and I have all this stuff rumbling around in my car. It added up to the 4 plastic bags. So I go over to the side of the road and I wave him in. And honestly, this person was cold, hungry, wet. I mean, like layer after layer after layer of his clothing was just dank, smelly, wet. And I handed him the 4 bags, and in there was like NyQuil and Advil and toothpaste and toilet paper and soup and, just anything that you could possibly think of. And of course, he looked at me and he goes, "You just don't know how much this means." And he burst into tears, and then I burst into tears and hugging each other. And I mean, I can't tell you how much it meant to me that I was able to, even if it was for one night, make somebody else's life comfortable. And so I went back to Indianapolis and I was staying at this apartment community, and the leasing consultant, Stacy, says, "Donna, why don't you name this nonprofit Bags of Blessing? Because that's what you're doing. You're giving a blessing." I'm like, oh my God, of course, I'm a big sprinkler anyway, so I'm crying. And Stacy came up with this great name. And then the next day, her and the maintenance supervisor had a box, and the box they put on magic marker, well, Donna, it's a Bob box. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how phenomenal is that? So now we have these bags of blessing Bob boxes that, go into, work vestibules or company lobbies, and we do collection boxes is what they are. And so, of course, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. I wonder, though, where all of this inspiration came from. And I was talking to my mom about it, and she said, well, your Uncle Gordon, he was homeless. And so I talked to my cousin, it was her dad, and I said, Leslie, could we walk through the history? Because somewhere in my conscious or subconscious, I knew this story. And so my mom's brother, my Uncle Gordon, was in the World War II. He was a paratrooper. So when he was discharged honorably, he came back stateside, and he had fallen in love with this, French woman, and needed to get her here. And, subsequently she came here to Chicago. They found work, and my uncle really struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder. But if you remember back then, it was called shell shock. They didn't know exactly what it was. And so you self-medicated. You used alcohol, or you used drugs, or, whatever could quiet the mind. So he, uprooted the family, and off to San Francisco he went, and really tried to make a go of it. He wanted to be in politics, and, that didn't work out, and couldn't really hold down a job, was really plagued with, some personal issues, mental health. And back then they had men's homes, which were for profit. They were not for nonprofit yet. But the small stipend that he would get from the military every month went towards housing. Well, in this men's home, he had food and a room and a television and all of that. But by this time, he's in his early 50s and just, an alcoholic and divorced now. And my cousin Leslie went to visit her dad, and he was 52 years old, but because of the hard life that he had, he looked like he was 72. He had aged, and, for whatever reason, got lost in the system. When my mom and my aunt went out to see where my Uncle Gordon was in 1995, he had passed away the year before in 1994 as a homeless vagrant on the streets of San Francisco. So that story is very near and dear to me. And again, I struggle because I don't understand homelessness in the age of the United States in, 2019. It just doesn't make sense to me. So Bags of Blessing is feeding the hungry one bag at a time. So we feed homeless, but we also feed women, children, and infants. We know that 68% of all senior citizens will go hungry so that they have money for their medication. And then we know that now 32% of all college students are going hungry so that they have money for tuition. So Bags of Blessing has multiple focuses. Not only do we put food in the bag, but we put gloves, mittens, scarves, and then we put in infant baby wipes. We also do bags for women. It's called a Bob bag, and it's for feminine hygiene products. And then we also do a Bob auction. So we take gently used name brand bags. It could be Louis Vuitton, Coach. It could be, just a myriad of those name brand bags. And through your donation, we auction those back out, and then that continues to feed money into Bags of Blessing so that we can get food, water, toiletries, etc. Also, with Bags of Blessing, the money that we're raising for Bags of Blessing will hopefully be the groundwork for us to buy an apartment building and name it Gordon's Place Apartments. So that's our story. And it is very near and dear to me. Of course, I tell everybody I'm a sprinkler. I'm always, tenderhearted about homeless. I don't understand why we have it. Hungry, I don't understand. With a nation rich, with food and resources, why we have anybody that's hungry. And I believe that homelessness is a circumstance and not necessarily a choice. Of course, we know that we have, homeless people that are drug addicted. We know that there's a mental health issue, but we don't have to have that as the end all be all. We can make a difference. And so I wanted to share this story with you. I wanted to let you know how much I appreciate all of the donations, the volunteers. I want you to know that together, I think that we can find a place for everyone to live. And I do believe that Bags of Blessing is divinely inspired. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all your help with Bags of Blessing. And I hope that you have a blessed day. So thanks. And make sure that you subscribe to our channel here. Make sure that you are part of our movement. We really appreciate it. Again, this is Donna Hickey with Bags of Blessing. And remember, no S on blessings. So bagsofblessing.org. Thank you.